The annual work party at Sarah's company had always been a big deal, and honestly, I never knew what to expect when we walked in. She worked at a high-powered marketing firm, the kind where ambition and ego were practically part of the dress code, and their yearly celebration was no exception. It wasn't just a party, it was a showcase, a subtle competition disguised as casual conversation. I'd been to a few before, and I always tried to stay invisible, which wasn't hard given the type of people who showed up. Sarah, on the other hand, thrived in that environment. She had a kind of charisma that drew people in effortlessly, smart, driven, and endlessly graceful. She could navigate the room like a ship cutting through stormy seas, commanding attention without even trying. Her boss, Richard Caldwell, was the sort of man whose presence could dominate a room without a word. Tall, polished, every move controlled, every glance calculated. Sarah had warned me about him, his intensity, his need to assert authority, his way of making people feel small when it suited him. I didn't worry too much. I'm the sort of guy comfortable in my own skin. I run a small carpentry business, keep my head down, and prefer the quiet satisfaction of building things with my hands over rubbing elbows with high-powered executives. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. When we arrived that evening, the venue took my breath away. A rooftop bar in the heart of the city, glass walls reflecting sprawling lights below, soft music blending with the hum of conversation, the faint scent of cocktails and perfume drifting through the air. Sarah looked radiant, a deep navy dress hugging her perfectly, hair cascading in soft waves. She was already in her element, moving among colleagues, laughing, making everyone feel like they mattered. And there I was, the quiet shadow on the sidelines, sipping a beer, nodding along to small talk about sports, the weather, and nothing particularly important. I should have stayed there, blending into the background as usual. But Richard noticed me immediately. I caught the glance across the room, a sharp, assessing look, the kind that makes you feel like you've wandered somewhere you don't belong. Sarah had warned me he was territorial, protective of his team, but I hadn't expected him to target me. And sure enough, he strode over, glass in hand, confidence radiating like he owned the room. "You must be Sarah's husband," he said, polite enough, but with a hint that made it clear he thought he had the upper hand. "The woodworker, right?" The words landed like a challenge. His tone was casual, but underneath it, he implied I was something quaint, lesser, a hobbyist. I nodded politely. "Yeah, that's me." "Thanks. Nice party." Richard wasn't done. Leaning slightly forward, his voice carrying just enough to draw attention, he said, "Must be tough keeping up with someone like Sarah. She's really making waves here." It was subtle, sharp, a jab wrapped in civility. A few of Sarah's colleagues shifted uncomfortably. Most didn't grasp the tension, but I felt it. I could have let it slide. Most men would have, and perhaps that would have been the smart move. But something about his smug grin rubbed me the wrong way. I took a slow sip of my drink, glanced at Sarah across the room, and caught her eye. Concern flickered there, a silent warning, "Please, don't escalate this." I smiled back, harmless, but inside I was calculating my move. Richard continued, clearly enjoying the game. "So, what do you do all day?" he asked, emphasizing do in that sharp, pointed way. "Carve tables while Sarah's out here closing deals?" A few people chuckled nervously. I felt the room's attention on me, waiting. I set my glass down deliberately, calm, steady. "Well," I said, letting the pause stretch just long enough, "I keep busy." What Richard and nearly everyone else didn't know was that carpentry was only a small part of my life. By day, I'm a cybersecurity consultant, contracted by some of the largest firms in the region, including the very one hosting this party. I'd been the one who patched their systems, rebuilt firewalls, replaced outdated encryption after a nasty breach. Anonymous work was my preference. But tonight, I decided to have a little fun. "Actually, Richard," I said, leaning slightly forward, letting the words hang, "I dabble in tech too. Ever hear about the server issues you had last spring? That nasty breach?" For a split second, his smirk faltered. His eyes narrowed. I continued casually, "I know a guy who helped fix it. It was a mess. Weak firewalls, outdated encryption, took weeks to clean up." Richard's face tightened. He'd claimed credit for the recovery, but I knew he barely understood the tech behind it. Sarah's eyes widened. She mouthed a silent don't, but I had already committed. Richard tried to regain control, leaning back. "Well, good thing we've got it handled now. My team's on top of everything." He clapped my shoulder with a dismissive gesture. I didn't flinch. Glad to hear it, I said, locking eyes with him. But if you ever need a real expert, I know a few people who've saved companies from going under. I could pass along their names. The room's energy shifted. Colleagues glanced at each other, sensing the tension. Richard's confident smile vanished, replaced with a calculating stare. He didn't know who I really was yet, but he could feel the balance tipping. Sarah, ever graceful, swooped in and steered the conversation toward an upcoming campaign. The cluster dispersed, Richard excused himself, but the effect lingered. Later, as Sarah and I gathered our coats, she pulled me aside, her voice low, sharp. What was that? I shrugged, playing innocent. Just making conversation. She didn't buy it. You embarrassed him. In front of everyone. He's my boss, Tom. Guilt struck me. She was right. I had let my ego get the better of me. The next week, Richard's behavior towards Sarah chilled. He nitpicked her reports, excluded her from key meetings. She didn't blame me outright, but I could see the frustration in her eyes. I apologized, promising to stay out of office politics, to keep my distance. To make amends, I offered to take her team out for drinks, keeping my consultancy side quiet. She agreed, but only if I swore not to pick fights with Richard again. I laughed, promising, though a private smirk lingered at the thought of Richard realizing I wasn't just Sarah's husband. A month later, the firm's IT director called me. Apparently, Richard had been asking questions, trying to figure out who I really was. The director laughed, saying Richard was paranoid I'd hacked his reputation. I told him to keep my identity secret. I didn't want attention, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing Richard was sweating, unsure how much I knew. Sarah's career thrived. She earned a promotion, and Richard became noticeably less cocky at company events. Watching him realize he wasn't the biggest fish in the room was satisfying. I've learned to keep my double life quiet at work parties now, blending in, observing, listening. And if Richard ever steps up again, I'll be ready, whether it's with a hammer in hand or just my knowledge.